because of the Watergate matter, I might not have the support of the Congress that I would consider necessary to back the very difficult decisions and carry out the duties of this office in the way the interests of the nation will require. Therefore, I shall resign the presidency effective at noon tomorrow. Vice President Ford will be sworn in as president at that hour in this office.
It had never happened before, has not happened since August 9th, 1974. 40 years ago Saturday, Richard Milhous Nixon, the 37th President of the United States, resigned in disgrace. Boarding Air Force One, he flew away from the White House, done in by Watergate, and Gerald Ford was sworn in as president. On the anniversary, many are looking for lessons and impacts from Nixon's resignation, among them sagging trust in the government. Today, just 13% of Americans trust the government to do the right thing. Before Watergate, that number routinely sat above 50%. Since Watergate, it has only broken 50% once. And Rich, that was in the days just after 9/11.
How much, Gina, you put on Watergate, or would the cynicism of the American public be where it is now, even if Nixon never flashed those V's as he went up the helicopter steps?
It's so hard to tell. I mean, it did have a huge impact. I think what's so remarkable about Watergate, when you think about it, is how peacefully the nation transitioned from a president resigning to a new president taking office. And I think that's something that we never even take notice of. But that doesn't happen in a lot of places, where people just accepted this resignation and the process took its course. But in terms of cynicism, it absolutely, but it was in the context of a lot of other things. It was in the context of Vietnam. It was in the context of, serious economic problems that were approaching. And it was a very difficult decade that we had just come out of. So I think it's a little bigger than just this one issue, but it had an impact.
A lot of people said it was end of an innocence of some sorts, that it wasn't Camelot, certainly, that he had, but it changed everything.
I think the mistrust in government, I think you can never look back and look at poll numbers like that, because I think so much more today with social media, elected officials, if we knew back in 1943 what they were doing, like we do today, every single thing, I think things would be a lot different.
If there was, Andrew, one thing that came out of that, I just think there's an assumption when people come, we talk about Albany all the time, the amount of people that we have here, he's probably one of them, who says, oh, they're all crooks, right? But the general public really believes now, when people are in higher office, it's the exception, not the norm, that's doing it the right way. I don't believe that. Now, he calls me naive, but that, more important than what I think, the public agrees with him that more of them are dirty than aren't, and that's a
I think that's true to a certain degree. I think it has always been happening in our history, and presidents and leaders have always overstepped their bounds. It just was never so nakedly obvious and petty as it was with Nixon. I mean, that Watergate would happen in an election that he was going to cruise to re-election in anyway.
And let's not forget, on tape. And I mean, that's a big distinction here, is that there was a record of it. I mean, we've seen that with some of the scandals of late, from Anthony Weiner on up. I mean, when it's on record and you have proof.
But when it was an audio tape, and they learned this from the recent books that came out, they should have burned those tapes. That's what they should have done.
Buckley told them to burn the tapes. Yeah. But there's a big difference, Richard, as we finish up here, is that so many elected officials are good, and they care about what they do.
I agree with you.
The only difference I see is that there are those many elected officials who I think on so many different occasions do what's in their best interest, not for their pocketbook, but for their next election. And that's why I'm very, very much believe that term limits would change much of that problem.
That's a whole different night, but I am with Tom in that, and I'm not going to let Dom tell me I'm wrong on this one, that more are better than aren't. All right.
Absolutely.
Thank you, gentlemen, and Jeannie. I almost said, man, we got in trouble again.
Thank you.
Coming up next, have a look at some news headlines. Stay with us.